Jake Morrison pressed his face against the cold concrete wall and listened to the sounds above ground. The heavy footsteps of the Zilithian guards echoed through the subway tunnels where he and 43 other humans had been hiding for 6 months. The alien boots made a distinctive clicking sound on the pavement that every human had learned to fear. The invasion had been swift and brutal. The Zilithians arrived on a Tuesday morning in March 2387 with ships that blocked out the sun. Over every major city on Earth. Their technology was so advanced that human weapons barely scratched their armor. Within 72 hours, every government on Earth had either surrendered or been destroyed. Jake remembered that first day when the tall reptilian beings emerged from their ships. They stood 9 feet tall with green-scaled skin and yellow eyes that seemed to glow in the dark. Their voices came through translation devices that made them sound cold and mechanical. The message they delivered to humanity was simple and terrifying. Earth was now property of the Zilithian Empire, and all humans were classified as slave labor. The processing had begun immediately. Massive collection centers were built in every major city where humans were brought in chains. Each person was given a number branded into their left arm and loaded onto transport ships. Jake had watched from the ruins of his apartment building as his neighbors were dragged away screaming. The Zilithians showed no emotion during these operations. To them, humans were just another resource to be harvested. Jake had been a construction worker before the invasion. He knew the underground tunnels of the city better than most people, which made him valuable to the small group of survivors who refused to surrender. They called themselves the Free Earth Resistance, but everyone knew they were just delaying the inevitable. The Zilithians had technology that could scan for human life signs from orbit. Captain Lisa Hayes had been a military intelligence officer before the world ended. She was the closest thing the Resistance had to a real leader. Lisa had managed to intercept some Zilithian communications and discovered that Earth was just one of hundreds of worlds the Empire had conquered. Humans were not the first species to be enslaved, and they would not be the last. The worst part was learning why the Zilithians wanted human slaves. Other alien species could be controlled through psychic domination. The Zilithians could simply project thoughts into their minds and make them obey without question. But something about human brains made this impossible. Human thoughts were too chaotic and unpredictable for the Zilithian mind control to work properly. This should have been good news, but it meant that humans required physical restraints and constant supervision. The Zilithians found this annoying, so they developed brutal punishment systems to keep human slaves in line. Stories filtered back from the labor camps about humans being worked to death in alien mines and factories across the galaxy. Dr. Kevin Carter had been studying the brain scans that Lisa managed to steal from a Zilithian medical facility. Kevin discovered that human neural patterns were completely different from every other known species, where other aliens had organized and predictable thought processes. Humans had random chaotic patterns that changed constantly. This chaos was what made humans immune to psychic control. Kevin believed this immunity could be enhanced and possibly weaponized. He had been working in secret to develop techniques that would make human thoughts even more chaotic and unpredictable. If his theories were correct, humans might be able to disrupt Zilithian technology just by being near it. The Resistance had been planning their biggest operation yet. Intelligence suggested that a high-ranking Zilithian commander would be visiting the main processing center in the city. If they could capture him alive, they might learn valuable information about Imperial operations. More importantly, they might be able to rescue some of the humans scheduled for transport off-world. Jake volunteered to lead the assault team. He knew it was essentially a suicide mission, but he also knew that doing nothing meant watching humanity disappear one transport ship at a time. The plan was simple and desperate. They would use homemade explosives to breach the facility walls, then fight their way to the command center using stolen Silithian weapons. The night before the mission, Lisa pulled Jake aside and handed him a small device that looked like a modified radio. She explained that Kevin had loaded it with all their research about human neural immunity. If the mission failed, Jake needed to broadcast this information to any remaining resistance cells. The data might be humanity's only hope for eventual freedom. The assault began at dawn. Jake led 12 volunteers through the sewers beneath the processing center. They emerged inside the facility perimeter and immediately came under heavy fire from Zilithian guards. The alien weapons cut through concrete walls like paper, but the humans used their knowledge of the building layout to stay ahead of the search. Jake managed to reach the command center, where he found dozens of humans waiting in holding cells for transport. Among them were children who stared at him with empty eyes that had seen too much horror. The sight filled him with rage that burned hotter than any weapon he carried. The Zilithian commander was exactly where intelligence said he would be. Jake burst into the control room with his weapon, ready only to find that it was a trap. 20 guards surrounded him with weapons aimed at his head. The commander spoke through his translator with what might have been amusement in his alien voice. Jake realized he had been betrayed, but it no longer mattered. As the guards closed in, he activated the broadcast device and sent Kevin's research data streaming across every frequency he could reach. Somewhere out there, other humans would receive this information and learn that they were not helpless against their alien masters. The last thing Jake saw before this Zilithian weapon fired was a small light on the device, confirming that the transmission was complete. His final thought was a prayer that somewhere in the darkness of this enslaved world, other humans were listening and learning that resistance was not only possible, but necessary for the survival of their species. 3 years had passed since Jake Morrison died, broadcasting the secret of human neural immunity to the scattered resistance cells. The message had reached Tony Rodriguez in the mining facility on Kepler 442b, where he supervised 300 human slaves extracting rare minerals for the Zilithian war machine. Tony had been a union organizer back on Earth, and he understood how to make small acts of defiance look like accidents. When the mining equipment broke down, Tony made sure it happened at the worst possible times for the alien supervisors. When transport schedules got delayed, Tony ensured the delays cascaded through the entire supply chain. The Zilithians noticed the inefficiencies, but they attributed them to human stupidity rather than sabotage. Their arrogance made them blind to the coordinated resistance growing under their noses. Tony carefully recruited other humans who shared his determination to fight back, even if it meant risking brutal punishment. Amy Sullivan had been in aerospace engineer before the invasion, and now she worked in the Zilithian processing facilities, maintaining their technology. The aliens considered humans too primitive to understand their advanced systems, but Amy proved them wrong every day. She memorized every circuit and component she touched, learning how alien technology functioned. Amy discovered that Zilithian devices relied on quantum processors that operated on principles similar to human neural networks. The chaotic patterns that made human thoughts unpredictable could potentially disrupt these quantum systems if properly focused. She began secretly modifying equipment to test her theories. On the prison planet, Caro 7 former Marine Sergeant Dan Collins had become the unofficial leader of the human prisoners. The Zilithians housed different species in separate compounds, but Dan found ways to communicate with the other enslaved aliens. Most of them had been broken by years of captivity and psychic control, but some still had fight left in them. Dan began teaching guerrilla warfare tactics to anyone willing to learn. He showed them how to make weapons from scrap metal and how to coordinate attacks using simple signals. The alien guards dismissed these activities as primitive rituals, not recognizing that Dan was building an army. The breakthrough came when Dr. Helen Parker received Jake Morrison's broadcast while working in a Zilithian research laboratory. Helen had been forced to study human biology for her captors who wanted to understand why psychic control failed on human subjects. Access to research equipment allowed her to test Kevin Carter's theories about neural immunity. Helen discovered that prolonged exposure to Zilithian technology was actually enhancing human cognitive abilities. The quantum fields generated by alien devices seemed to strengthen the chaotic neural patterns that made humans unique. She realized that the Zilithians had created their own worst nightmare by forcing humans to work with their technology. Helen began secretly enhancing other humans using modified Zilithian medical equipment. The process was dangerous, and several subjects died during early experiments, but the survivors emerged with dramatically increased intelligence and mental abilities. They could process information faster and think in ways that confused even advanced alien minds. The enhanced humans formed a secret network that communicated through quantum entanglement techniques Helen had stolen from Zilithian research. They began coordinating resistance activities across multiple star systems, sharing information and resources in ways the Empire could not detect or intercept. Amy Sullivan became one of the first enhanced humans, and her already impressive engineering skills expanded beyond anything she had imagined possible. She could now understand alien technology at the deepest levels and began developing hybrid devices that combined human intuition with Zilithian science. Amy's greatest achievement was reverse engineering a Zilithian transport ship computer system. She learned how to access Imperial databases and communication networks, giving the Resistance unprecedented intelligence about enemy operations. More importantly, she discovered how to pilot the alien vessels. The opportunity came during a routine prisoner transport from Caro 7 to a labor camp in the Vega system. Amy had been assigned to maintain the ship's navigation computers, and she saw her chance to strike a major blow against the Empire. Instead of subtle sabotage, she decided on dramatic action that would inspire humans across the galaxy. Amy waited until the transport ship was approaching the communication relay station that coordinated all Imperial activity in the sector. Massive structure orbited a gas giant and served as the nerve center for 12 star systems. If it could be destroyed, the Zilithians would lose contact with millions of slaves and hundreds of facilities. Dan Collins and his fellow prisoners had been expecting Amy's signal when the ship's internal security systems mysteriously malfunctioned. The human prisoners overwhelmed their guards and seized control of the vessel. Dan led the assault while Amy fought to maintain control of the navigation systems against increasingly desperate Zilithian countermeasures. The transport ship was never designed for combat, but Amy's modifications had turned it into a guided missile. She programmed the navigation computer to lock onto the communication relay's main power core, while Dan and his team fought off boarding parties from Imperial patrol ships that had responded to the emergency. Tony Rodriguez received Amy's final transmission from his mining facility 3 light years away. She explained what they were attempting and urged all human resistance cells to prepare for a general uprising. The destruction of the communication relay would create a window of confusion that might allow coordinated strikes across multiple worlds. Amy's last words were broadcast to every human who could receive them. She spoke with the calm determination of someone who had found peace with her choice. She said that humans had been born free and would die free no matter what alien masters tried to chain them. Her sacrifice would light a fire that would burn across the galaxy. The transport ship struck the communication relay at near light speed, and both structures vanished in a flash of energy that could be seen from neighboring star systems. The explosion severed communication links to over 200 worlds and created the chaos the human resistance needed to begin their real war for freedom. On Caro 7, the loss of communication with Imperial Command meant that local guards had to make decisions without orders from above. Anne Collins had been preparing for exactly this moment, and within hours of the explosion, human prisoners had seized control of 3 prison compounds and were distributing weapons to other enslaved species. The age of quiet resistance was over, and the age of open rebellion had begun. The destruction of the communication relay had triggered uprisings on 12 worlds, but the rebellion needed coordination to survive the inevitable Imperial counterattack. Admiral Sarah Blake had escaped from the maximum security prison on Titan 7. During the chaos that followed, Amy Sullivan's sacrifice, and now she worked to unite the scattered resistance cells into something resembling a military force. Sarah had commanded a destroyer in Earth's naval forces before the invasion, and she understood both human psychology and military strategy better than anyone else in the resistance. She knew that humans fought differently than other species because they thrived in chaotic situations that paralyzed more logical minds. The Zilithian military doctrine relied on predictable tactics and overwhelming technological superiority. Their commanders followed rigid battle plans that assumed enemy forces would respond rationally to superior firepower. But humans did not fight rationally, and this gave Sarah an advantage she intended to exploit. Sarah's first priority was establishing secure communication between resistance cells. The enhanced humans led by Dr. Helen Parker had developed quantum entanglement transmitters that could not be intercepted or jammed by Zilithian technology. These devices allowed instant communication across any distance, making it possible to coordinate simultaneous strikes. Engineer Rick Thompson had been enhanced by Helen's process, and his improved cognitive abilities allowed him to understand Zilithian computer systems at the code level. Rick led a team that captured the research station orbiting Wolf 359 in a daring raid that caught the alien defenders completely off guard. The research station contained detailed maps of the entire Zilithian communication network, along with access codes for Imperial databases. More importantly, it housed the central servers that controlled psychic domination systems across hundreds of worlds. Rick discovered that these systems had a fatal weakness that could be exploited. The Zilithian psychic control network operated on quantum frequencies that were similar to the chaotic neural patterns found in human brains. Rick realized that if enough enhanced humans focused their thoughts simultaneously, they could create interference that would disrupt the entire system. The psychic chains holding millions of slaves could be broken with the right kind of coordinated mental effort. Helen Parker began training teams of enhanced humans to weaponize their chaotic thought patterns. The process was exhausting and dangerous because it required pushing human consciousness beyond normal limits, but the results were extraordinary. Enhanced humans could now project mental chaos that scrambled alien technology from a distance. Ban. Collins had turned Karo 7 into a training ground for liberated slaves from dozens of species. The prison planet became a military academy where former victims learned human fighting techniques and tactical approaches. Dan discovered that many alien species became incredibly effective warriors once they overcame the psychological conditioning of centuries of slavery. The first major test of human military leadership came when a Zilithian battle fleet arrived to retake Karo 7. The Imperial force consisted of 12 heavy cruisers and 50 escort vessels, carrying enough firepower to sterilize the planet's surface. By conventional military logic, the human defenders should have surrendered immediately. Sarah Blake commanded the defense from a captured Zilithian frigate that Rick Thompson had converted into a mobile command center. Her strategy relied on the one advantage humans possessed over their enemies, which was complete unpredictability in combat situations. Instead of defending fixed positions, Sarah ordered her forces to attack. The human assault caught the Zilithian fleet completely unprepared. Small groups of modified transport ships swarmed the larger Imperial vessels, using tactics that violated every principle of rational space combat. Human pilots flew directly into enemy fire, while enhanced humans aboard the ships projected mental chaos that disrupted alien navigation and weapon systems. The battle lasted 18 hours and ended with 7 Zilithian cruisers destroyed and the remainder fleeing in panic. More importantly, the victory proved that humans could defeat superior alien technology through superior tactics and mental warfare. News of the victory spread through the galactic communication networks, inspiring rebellions on dozens of additional worlds. The Zilithian High Command finally began to understand the threat that humans represented. Emperor Vorthik himself issued orders that all human slaves were to be eliminated rather than risked in further uprisings. But the order came too late, because humans had already begun spreading their neural immunity techniques to other enslaved species. Helen Parker's enhancement process worked on many alien races once they learned to embrace chaos rather than fighting it. Species that had been slaves for centuries discovered they could break free from psychic control by adopting human-style thought patterns. The technique spread like a virus through the slave populations of the empire. Sarah Blake established the first liberated world on Kepler 442b, where Tony Rodriguez had spent years organizing mining operation sabotage. The planet became a refuge for freed slaves and a base for military operations against imperial targets. Human engineering teams led by enhanced individuals began building weapons and ships specifically designed to exploit Zilithian weaknesses. The enhanced humans proved capable of innovations that surprised even themselves. They developed new forms of faster-than-light travel that operated by manipulating quantum chaos rather than following the orderly principles of Zilithian science. These ships could appear and disappear unpredictably, making them nearly impossible to track or intercept. Rick Thompson created the first human-designed weapons that could channel mental chaos into destructive force. These devices allowed even unenhanced humans to project thoughts that disrupted alien technology and caused physical damage to Zilithian equipment. The weapons were organic and grew stronger as more humans used them simultaneously. The turning point came when Sarah Blake led a coordinated assault on the Zilithian fortress world of Draconis III. The planet housed the central command facility for the entire slave system, and its destruction would cripple imperial operations across 1,000 worlds. The attack would require perfect timing and the cooperation of resistance cells throughout the galaxy. Helen Parker coordinated the mental assault while Sarah commanded the physical battle. At the designated moment, enhanced humans on hundreds of worlds focused their chaotic thoughts on the psychic control network. The resulting interference created a wave of liberation that swept across the galaxy as millions of slaves suddenly found themselves free of mental domination. Dan Collins led the ground assault on Draconis III, while Rick Thompson hacked into the planetary defense systems. The combination of mental warfare and conventional tactics overwhelmed the Zilithian defenders, who had never faced an enemy that could attack their minds and their technology simultaneously. The fall of Draconis III marked the beginning of the end for the Zilithian Empire. With their psychic control networks shattered and their communication systems compromised, the aliens found themselves fighting dozens of separate wars against enemies they could not predict or understand. Sarah Blake stood in the ruins of the fortress world and broadcast a message to every human in the galaxy. She declared that the age of slavery was ending and the age of human liberation had begun. The species that had been marked for extinction had instead become the harbingers of galactic freedom. The Empress of Chaos had awakened, and she would not rest until every chain was broken. The Terran Liberation Front had grown from a desperate resistance movement into a military force that struck fear into the hearts of alien commanders across the galaxy. Captain Greg Watson commanded the first fleet of captured and modified Zilithian vessels that operated under human leadership and their success rate against Imperial forces was unprecedented. Greg had been a fighter pilot before the invasion, and he brought human tactical flexibility to space combat in ways that confused alien strategists. Where Zilithian fleet commanders followed predetermined battle formations, Greg's pilots flew in patterns that seemed random but were actually carefully coordinated chaos designed to exploit enemy weaknesses. The key to human success was their ability to adapt during combat, while alien forces remained locked into rigid doctrines. When Zilithian ships moved to counter one human tactic, the humans had already shifted to something completely different. This tactical fluidity made human forces appear larger and more dangerous than they actually were. Dr. Helen Parker had perfected the enhancement process and now led teams of super-intelligent humans who could outthink even the most advanced alien scientists. These enhanced individuals developed new forms of psychological warfare that targeted the fundamental assumptions different species made about reality and combat. The enhanced humans discovered that each alien species had specific mental vulnerabilities that could be exploited through targeted chaos projection. Zilithians became paralyzed when their ordered thought processes were disrupted, while other species experienced different forms of breakdown when exposed to human mental patterns. Fear became humanity's greatest weapon as stories of the chaos species spread through galactic communication networks. Alien crews would surrender rather than face human forces, and entire star systems switched sides when human fleets appeared in their space. The psychological impact of human unpredictability proved more effective than conventional weapons. Maria Lopez had been a social worker before the invasion, and now she established the first human colony on the liberated world of New Hope. Her approach to governance emphasized individual freedom and voluntary cooperation rather than the hierarchical control systems that dominated alien societies. The human colonial model attracted voluntary immigrants from dozens of species who preferred chaotic freedom to ordered slavery. These mixed communities became laboratories for new forms of social organization that combined human adaptability with alien knowledge and skills. Maria discovered that many alien species possessed valuable abilities that had been suppressed under imperial rule. When freed from psychic control, these species could contribute technologies and perspectives that enhanced human capabilities. The result was a rapid acceleration of human development in multiple fields. The Zilithian Empire began fracturing as outlying systems chose to surrender rather than face human assault. The imperial military found itself fighting a war on hundreds of fronts against enemies who seemed to anticipate every move while following no predictable strategy themselves. General Krex commanded the largest remaining Zilithian battle fleet, and he attempted to study human tactics to develop effective countermeasures. But every time his forces adapted to one human approach, the humans would immediately shift to something completely different. The apparent randomness of human behavior made them impossible to predict or counter. The breaking point came when enhanced humans, led by Rick Thompson, infiltrated the imperial capital system and began broadcasting chaos directly into the planetary communication networks. The mental interference disrupted everything from traffic control to food distribution, creating massive social breakdown on Zealoths. Prime itself, Emperor Vorthik faced civil war within his own empire, as some generals attempted to negotiate with human forces while others demanded total extermination of the chaos species. The imperial government split into factions that fought each other as much as they fought the human liberation forces. Sarah Blake recognized the opportunity and launched Operation Endgame, which was designed to capture the Zilithian homeworld and force the complete surrender of the Empire. The assault would require perfect coordination between dozens of human fleets and the largest mental warfare operation ever attempted. The Siege of Zealoths. Prime began with a coordinated psychic assault by over 1,000 enhanced humans working together to project chaos into the planet's defense networks. The interference was so intense that Imperial computers began generating random commands and weapon systems turned on each other. Greg Watson led the naval assault with 200 human vessels against the most heavily defended planet in the galaxy. The Zilithian home fleet outnumbered the human forces 10-1 and possessed superior firepower, but Greg's tactical unpredictability turned the battle into a demonstration of human superiority. Dan Collins commanded the ground forces that landed on Zelith's Prime while the space battle raged overhead. His troops consisted of liberated slaves from dozens of species, all trained in human guerrilla tactics and motivated by years of suffering under Imperial rule. The combination of space combat, orbital bombardment, and ground assault created a three-dimensional battle that stretched Zilithian defenders beyond their ability to coordinate responses. Human forces seemed to be everywhere at once, striking from unexpected directions and vanishing before Imperial counterattacks could be organized. Helen Parker coordinated the mental warfare from her command ship in orbit around Zelith's Prime. The enhanced humans under her command projected so much psychic chaos that many Zilithian civilians began experiencing breakdowns as their ordered thought processes collapsed under the assault. The turning point came when Rick Thompson led a team of enhanced humans into the Imperial Palace itself. They used advanced stealth technology combined with chaos projection to penetrate defenses that had protected Zilithian emperors for thousands of years. Rick's team disabled the planetary shield generators from within, while Greg Watson's fleet pressed their attack from space. The combination of internal sabotage and external assault finally overwhelmed the capital's defenses, and human forces began landing in the heart of the Zilithian Empire. Emperor Vorthik found himself trapped in his own throne room as human soldiers surrounded the palace. The being who had once commanded the slavery of billions now faced a choice between death and surrender to the species he had tried to exterminate. The Emperor's final transmission to his scattered forces was an order to cease all resistance and accept human terms for surrender. The message marked the complete collapse of galactic civilization's most powerful empire and the beginning of a new age under human leadership. Sarah Blake accepted the Emperor's surrender aboard his own flagship in a ceremony that was broadcast to every world in the galaxy. The admiral who had started as an escaped prisoner now stood as the architect of the greatest military victory in galactic history. The age of alien domination was over, and the age of human liberation had begun. But Sarah knew that winning the war was only the beginning, because the real challenge would be building a new galactic civilization that could accommodate the chaos and freedom that made humanity unique. The galaxy would never be the same, because the species that refused to kneel had taught the universe that freedom was worth any price, and that even the mightiest empires could fall when faced with beings who would not accept chains. The surrender of Emperor Vorthik marked the end of the Zilithian Empire, but the beginning of an even greater challenge for humanity. Admiral Sarah Blake stood in the ruins of the Imperial throne room, knowing that destroying a galactic tyranny was easier than building something better to replace it. The human approach to governance was fundamentally different from anything the galaxy had ever seen, where alien civilizations relied on rigid hierarchies and central control. Humans preferred flexible cooperation and individual freedom. This chaos that made humans unpredictable in war might also make them effective at creating lasting peace. Sarah's first decision was to offer full membership in the new Galactic Confederation to all species, including former Zilithian colonies. The proposal shocked many liberated worlds who expected humanity to simply replace one empire with another. But Sarah understood that human strength came from embracing chaos rather than imposing order. The former emperor became an unexpected ally in the transition process. Vorthik had ruled through fear and domination, but he possessed detailed knowledge of galactic politics and economics that proved invaluable for establishing the new government. His cooperation with human authorities helped convince other Zilithian worlds to join the Confederation peacefully. Dr. Helen Parker established the first Confederation Council on the neutral world of Harmony Station, where representatives from hundreds of species gathered to create a new form of galactic government. The human principle of chaotic cooperation proved attractive to species who had suffered under authoritarian rule for centuries. The Confederation Constitution was unlike any document in galactic history because it emphasized adaptation and flexibility, rather than fixed laws and rigid structures. The system was designed to evolve continuously as new challenges and opportunities arose, rather than maintaining static institutions that might become oppressive over time. Jake Morrison had become a legend among humans and liberated aliens alike. His sacrifice in broadcasting the neural immunity data had started the chain of events that led to galactic liberation. The Confederation capital was built on New Terra, and the main government building was named Morrison Hall in his honor. Maria Lopez became the first president of the Galactic Confederation, and her inauguration ceremony was attended by beings from every corner of the galaxy. Her speech emphasized that the Confederation existed to serve its members rather than to rule them, and that any government that forgot this principle deserved to be replaced. The economic transformation of the galaxy was as dramatic as the political changes. Under the Empire, most species had been forced into specific economic roles that served imperial interests. The Confederation encouraged trade and cooperation between species, while allowing each world to develop according to its natural advantages and preferences. Greg Watson commanded the new Confederation Navy, which was responsible for protecting member worlds and maintaining peace between different species. The Navy operated on human principles of flexible response and voluntary cooperation, rather than the rigid command structures that had characterized imperial forces. The human approach to military organization proved surprisingly effective at preventing conflicts between member species. Instead of imposing solutions from above Confederation, forces worked with local authorities to find creative compromises that addressed underlying causes of disputes. Rick Thompson led the technological revolution that swept through Confederation space, as human chaos engineering was combined with alien science and creativity. The hybrid technologies that emerged were more advanced and versatile than anything either humans or aliens had developed independently. Breakthrough discovery was that chaos and order were not opposites, but complementary forces that could be balanced to create stable yet adaptable systems. Human unpredictability provided the innovation, while alien logic provided the structure needed to implement new ideas effectively. Dan Collins established the first Confederation Military Academy on Caro 7, where the liberation movement had begun. The academy trained officers from every member species in human tactical flexibility while teaching humans about alien military traditions and technologies. The academy became a symbol of the Confederation's commitment to combining the best aspects of different cultures rather than imposing human dominance. Graduates went on to command mixed species units that were more effective than any purely human or alien military formations. 10 years after the liberation of Earth, the galaxy was unrecognizable. Human colonies flourished on hundreds of worlds. But more importantly, the human philosophy of adaptive cooperation had become the dominant model for interstellar civilization. The Zilithian species had made a remarkable transformation from imperial masters to valuable Confederation members. Their organizational skills and technological knowledge combined with human creativity and flexibility to produce innovations that benefited the entire galaxy. Dr. Kevin Carter lived to see his theories about human neural immunity become the foundation for a new science of consciousness that revolutionized understanding of intelligence and creativity. His research centers on dozen worlds studied the interaction between chaos and order in biological and mechanical systems. Carter had become an elder statesman of the Confederation and spent his final years teaching at the University of New Terra, where students from hundreds of species came to learn about human approaches to problem solving and adaptation. The classroom where Carter taught his final lecture was filled with young beings from across the galaxy. A Zilithian student asked him the question that everyone wanted answered. Why had humans succeeded where every other species had failed to resist imperial domination? Carter smiled and looked out at the diverse faces surrounding him. Some were human, but most were aliens who had chosen to study human methods and perspectives. The old scientist felt a deep satisfaction, knowing that the chaotic creativity of his species had become a gift to the entire galaxy. His answer became part of Confederation history and was carved into the memorial wall at Morrison Hall. Carter said that humans succeeded because they refused to accept the limitations that others tried to impose on them. When alien masters tried to make humans predictable, humans chose to remain chaotic. When the Empire tried to break human spirits, humans chose to remain free. The secret of human success was not superior technology or greater intelligence, but simply the refusal to give up hope and the determination to remain true to their chaotic creative nature, even under the worst circumstances. Other species could learn these attitudes, and many had, but humans had been born with them. Carter's final words to his students were a reminder that freedom was not a destination, but a continuous choice that every being had to make every day. The Confederation existed because enough individuals had chosen freedom over security and chaos over order when the choice mattered most. The galaxy would continue to evolve and face new challenges, but the principles that guided the Confederation would endure. Adaptation, flexibility, and voluntary cooperation had proven stronger than domination and control. The species that refused to kneel had taught the universe that even the greatest empires were vulnerable to beings who valued freedom above life itself. The memorial to Jake Morrison bore a simple inscription that captured the essence of the human spirit that had transformed the galaxy. It read that humanity was made slaves, but chose to remain free, was made victims, but chose to become liberators, and would continue to choose freedom as long as stars shone in the darkness of space.